If our children are the seeds and we are their gardeners, how we plant them and the way we tend to them will determine if they reach their full bloom. So we choose to listen to our intuition, focus on connection, and stay deeply rooted in order to make the most of every season in motherhood. We don't have all the answers, and we probably never will. We are learning as they grow. This is our journey, and by sharing our truths, we hope to encourage anyone along the way. Welcome to the Learning as They Grow podcast. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Learning as They Grow. I'm your host, Alicia Foster. Today, I'm going to be talking about change through motherhood and change that happens through friendships sometimes whenever you become a new mom. This has been a bit of a journey for me into motherhood and just accepting new truths about myself, accepting things about friends, and just seasons of life. So if you're in that same boat, I wanted to share a little bit about that with you and see if it can help you in any way, and share something that a friend told me that actually really helped me during this hard season. So any show notes is going to be in the bottom here. You'll be able to go onto it if you're more of a reader, or if I say anything that resonates with you and you want to be able to look back on it and not listen to the whole episode. This will all be in my blog as well at fosteringmamabears.com. So you can just check the show notes for this and you'll be able to follow along. So let's start with motherhood. Man, becoming a new mom. I don't know about you, but motherhood has definitely changed me, and that is a good thing. I think personally, it's taken me a little bit to accept that and to be happy with that and to embrace my new self. But I see now that it is so much for the better. Prior to motherhood, I was big into work. I was a teacher for a couple of years before having my daughter, and just work. I was very work focused. I was big into being a little more carefree whenever my husband and I would go on adventures. We do kind of crazy things, go jump off bridges and hike up things that I look back and I'm like, that was a little dangerous. And so a little bit more carefree. And I was a little bit just more self-involved. I mean, not having a child in my life, I was able to just do what I wanted, go where I want, when I want, stay up however late I want. And not that any of those things are bad alone, being, work focused, carefree, or a little more self-involved. That's not bad per se, but those three character traits in myself have had to change since having a child. And not that I'm not adventurous anymore. I definitely still love adventure, and I definitely still feel the need to take some time for myself. And I still have a good work ethic whenever I, am doing things involving work. And I just have had to tone down some of those character traits. Those were the three in my mind that I kind of thought of that have definitely changed for me. They're probably something different for you. And all of my traits have not changed. I'm still the same me. I just have become a little bit more revised, maybe a little bit more new and improved for this season of my life. So thinking to yourself, what traits of you have maybe had to change, had to give way a little bit in order for some of these other new traits of yourself to be able to come through and grow. I think that it's okay to accept that change. So that's one thing that I want to share. Change is needed for us to be able to grow into our full potential. We are full of possibility. I personally believe that God has a beautiful vision of how our life is going to go and the paths that we're going to take. And we have to be willing to accept some of those changes and some of those decisions. Whenever you come to certain forks in the road, we have to be open and willing to God's plan and able for those, in order for those things to reach their full potential. So it's kind of like a two-person, dance there. A lot of people just say, let go and let God, but there's a part that we have to do as well in that. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where people are like, oh, I'm totally in control. I'm gonna I forgot the word that I'm trying to think of, but they say they're going to like create their own destiny. And, if you think of great things, then it will happen for you. And for me, I just think that it takes two parts. I think it takes us putting in the effort, us accepting the change that's needed, and us tuning in to God's plan for us, but also trusting God whenever He does place these things in our life. And that's for me. Now, whether you believe in God or not is really not the point here. Whatever it may be, it is just understanding that we do have to be open to the change. Change is hard. Um, it doesn't really come easily, especially when you are aware of how comfortable and how content you are in the life that you're in. So sometimes people stay in these situations and don't ever embrace the change because it's scary. They don't want to have to accept change because it can be uncomfortable. There can be a period of accepting that we don't know what's happening next. And I just personally think that it is so big to say, okay, if I step back and I just let myself get uncomfortable for a little bit, let the change just happen naturally, it really is beautiful on the other side of it. And just being so free to understand that, finding your true self really can make you happier on the other side of change. And I'm obviously talking about change here as it relates to what I'm discussing, which is motherhood. And I'm going to get into change in friendships as well, and how sometimes we stay comfortable in situations that really aren't meant for us anymore, but we are afraid of that change. But also, I think this can relate to any aspect of somebody's life, whether you're in a job that you don't like, or if you're in a relationship that's not for you anymore, if you're in a state or a town that you're like, this is not for me. I'm not able to grow into my full potential anymore. I think a lot of times as people, we just get stuck in those ruts because it is so hard and it is scary. The unknown is scary. But if you just dive into it and say, I'm going to embrace this change and see what happens, it can be so freeing to be on the other side of it. So for me, that change was quitting my job and becoming a full-time stay-at-home mom. That was very scary for me. I have been so happy on this side of my choice now. And I'm glad that I'm able to share that truth with you, but it didn't come easy. I definitely had a big learning curve. It took about a year for me to get into a new routine and accept that this is my new normal. And there's so much happiness and beauty and freedom on this side of that decision. But it didn't come easily. It didn't come quickly. I had to, me and my husband had to make some financial sacrifices. I had to make mental sacrifices and say, okay, I'm going to be different on the other side of this. Am I ready for that? So that was a big change for me. In addition to that, you kind of drift away from people that were really close to you because of your job whenever that happens. So that's something I'll get into in a minute as well. So that was one huge change for me in motherhood. Another change for me in motherhood was becoming very aware of things of this world that I just didn't want to be involved in anymore. Whenever I started seeing the world through the innocence of my child's eyes and just saw how sinful in nature it is and how lost we've become in this world, I started backing away more from certain things. And it is uncomfortable. It's hard to have to make some decisions. And people might say things like, oh my goodness, you're thinking too much about that, or they might have other, things to say behind your back when you're not there. But understanding that I felt that change was necessary for my child. I heard God pressing in on me and telling me I needed to look at some of these decisions that we were making for our child. And I leaned in on it. And I'm so happy now that I'm on the other side of that. And now I've actually opened up my eyes to a whole community of people that are like minded with a lot of things. I'm being kind of vague here because it may look differently for you. For us, those changes involve things like looking at nutrition. I became very hyper aware now that I'm have a little body to feed that came out just perfect and unblemished. I'm like, I don't want to put junk in you that I don't feel is good for you, or that I'm able to see in research is harmful and can cause long-term issues for my child. And So that's something that's been a shift and a change in me. And people might mock me and say, oh goodness, you used to not care about this. You used to eat McDonald's or pizza or whatever it may be. And I still have those things on occasion. I'm just more aware of it. So it's nice having people that can relate to things like that. Another change that has happened with me. I was a public education school teacher. I was all gung ho for public ed, and now I find myself leaning more towards the potential of homeschooling my daughter when she gets to the age. And so that's been a big shift as well. It is, difficult to be on one side of the fence with things and now be on the other side. And sometimes people don't understand that. But like I said, there's a huge homeschooling community, there's a huge community of natural minded moms. There's just a lot of things. The list could go on and on for things that have personally changed in my mindset now that I'm a mom. And it is something that I'm conscious of, and I have to be real with myself and with others about. Now, let me make it clear that doesn't mean that I don't hang out with people who don't agree with any of that stuff. I do. I think it's okay and it's healthy in friendships to have differences and to be able to have open conversation about things, and just share your truths with each other. And at the end of the day, be able to say, we can agree to disagree. I still love you. However, whenever you do have certain differences, after a while, I think sometimes those things can come in between friendships, especially if you're in a time like right now with the world over the last 2, 3 years, everything with COVID and political things going on in the world, social things going on. There's been very big dividing lines with people. And this has been hard and very eye opening on a lot of my friendships and just relationships in general, and having to say, this is where we stand on things. I still love you. Let's still be friends. Let's still be cool. But whenever you get to certain people don't have an interest in being around people who are different. So all of that just to say that's where we are with the change that has happened for me and my family since we've become parents. But it may look differently for you. So I kind of jotted down a list of things that might have changed for people as you become a friend, as you become a mom, things that might change in your friendships. So it's very common that sometimes people can't relate with you anymore. They don't really care to hear what you have to say. If you're interested in motherhood or parenthood, they might, humor it for a little bit, but sometimes it's just not relevant to them. So that can be hard. That can be a time whenever you're like, man, these were my people, and now I don't feel that. You may not get invited to things like you used to. If you used to be around a party group or people who like to stay up late, they might invite you, and it might get old that you're having to say no because you have a child now. And that a lot of times people don't understand that. And you might be somebody that all of your friends had their kids prior to you. And so you are now realizing that you're in a different boat because now you have an infant or a toddler and they have kids that are in school, so they can relate to different things that you now can't relate to yet. Um, you may be in a situation where you're just not interested in the same things that you were interested in prior. So if any of these things are happening in your friendships, it kind of feels isolating sometimes. It can kind of feel depressing, and it will make you feel a little lonely to not be able to say, we're the same friends that we once were. Now, again, I feel like I have to make this clear because this isn't the case with every friendship. Some friendships are just tried and true and can go through the seasons of life together. And even if you're on one season and your friends are on the other season, you'll still meet back. Now, those friendships are near and dear. I definitely think that those are special and unfortunately not very common. But I think it's okay to accept that certain friendships are for certain seasons of life. So I think my whole point in this podcast episode is kind of just to accept and embrace the change that might happen in you in motherhood, and also accepting the change that might happen in your friendships. So when all of that was happening to me in the beginning of my motherhood, all these changes are happening with me, and my focus just became more about my child and my family, and just I got a different vision of things. I did feel a distance with some people in my life, and that was really hard for me to accept. However, I started, like I said, there's communities of people with like-minded things as well, and there's communities all around you, no matter what your interests are, no matter what your hobbies are, there are people around you who are into that stuff too. And so I started reaching out to people in this time, and rekindled old friendships. People that I thought were for one season of my life now are in a similar season as me, and I was able to rekindle friendships with them. And so when I went through that, I was, kind of, I was enjoying the time with the new friends, but I was also sad about some lost friendships. And I was venting to one of my new mom friends about how disheartening it was that one of my old friends just was not really there for me in the way that I had expected in my postpartum season, wasn't really interested in meeting my child, and was just busy doing their own life, which is totally fine. But I guess I just needed that person a little bit more, or hoped that they would have been there a little bit more. So I was venting about that to my new mom friend. And the tip that she gave me, or the thing that she just said in response, I hold on to it still to this day. And I want to share it with you or with any other mom. And I hope that you can pass this along the way. And it doesn't even have to do with motherhood, it could honestly do with anything going on in your life, anytime there's a seasonal change. So, as I was talking to her about this, she said something that's kind of similar to the when one door closes, another door opens, but it had a lot more meaning behind it. It really was a very positive way of saying it. And not so much that the other door has to close and that friendship is done, but more so just positive silver lining and understanding that it's a season and it might open back up for that person. So, what she said in response to me was, she said, it's almost as if God was making room in your heart and in your life for new friendships. And I thought, man, she's so right. Because if I wouldn't have had to go through that uncomfortable change, those lonely times, the times of feeling like, oh my goodness, is anybody able to relate to me? My friends are out doing this, or my friends are talking about this, and I'm just not in the same page anymore. If I didn't have to go through that uncomfortableness, I wouldn't have met some of the amazing new friends that I have now in my life. And again, those other friends are still there. I'm thankful for that. But I am able to open my heart and my life up for other people now too. And I'm so thankful for that. So I just wanted to share that with anybody if that was encouraging in any way. It definitely helped me, because it made me be aware that she's right. If I wouldn't have encountered any of that, I surely wouldn't have had time or interest in making time for new people who are wanting to hang out, go on play dates, or just talk, or meet up for coffee, or um, just vent in the middle of the night. As a new mom, you're up all hours of the night. And I found myself leaning in on women that just a year prior were strangers to me, but they were doing the same. We were able to relate to each other. And now those are some of my closest friends. And I'm so thankful for that. And so, as I stated before, I had changed. So it's okay that my friendships were changing. This doesn't mean that those old friendships have to be completely cut out. It's simply meaning that you don't have to feel guilt for wanting to find people who better serve you in this season in your life. You don't have to waste time like smiling and just faking and being interested in things that you're no longer interested in. You don't have to go and put yourself in situations that you're not comfortable with anymore. You don't have to quiet yourselves about things that make you excited. Right now, motherhood makes me excited. I really do enjoy this season, and I am very focused on it. A year ago, I was very focused on my job, and that was a great time for me. I was able to talk with people about that. But now I'm in this season of my life. And while I can still have conversations with people who I once did, a lot of my focus is different now, and that's okay. You don't have to quiet yourself and make yourself feel unseen, or be sad that you feel unheard or irrelevant to anybody, or that nobody is interested in what you're talking about. There are people out there who are interested in what you're talking about. There are people who are in the same boat, and these people may not be your best friends, but you never know what kind of beautiful friendships can blossom out of these things. And I'm looking now at some of the people that I'm becoming friends with and thinking about how these people's kids can be friends with my kid as she grows up. And I would like to have her around people who have very similar values and are kind of just in the same things that we're in. Now we're open to differences. We're open to discussing things with people. We're not trying to just like shelter her or ourselves. But as I stated before, there's a lot of crazy in this world right now. And we're just not interested in um, making her be involved in a lot of stuff early on and just accepting things that we're not comfortable just because that's the norm. We are just different than that right now, and that's okay. So all of that just is my situation and what I've gone through. I wanted to share it with you if it could be helpful in any way, shape, or form. And just understanding that sometimes it's okay to accept the change that's happening in you and accept the change that's happening in friendships because there's beauty in embracing that change. And I hope that you're able to find the beauty for yourself as well. And just saying, this is who I am now, and that's okay. I'm happy that I'm not the way I was 10 years ago in my early 20s. I would not be able to be the mom that I am now. I would not be able to be the spouse that I am now. I would not be able to be the woman that I am now. I would not be able to be the friend that I am now. There is a lot that has changed about me, and I'm okay with that. And I hope that you're able to come to that understanding for yourself as well, whatever it may be, and just knowing that change is good, embrace the change, and also knowing that there's people out there. If you need a community of people and you're just feeling so lost, there are people out there, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I can try to get you in touch with people, whether that's virtually or meeting people in your community. I'm going to talk next week about finding your tribe, how that's so important in motherhood, in finding your people and knowing how to find your people. It's kind of funny. It's like like dating season. It's like, do I want to go out to a bar and meet people, or do I want to go to a church to meet people? Like, you're definitely going to have to figure out what is your vibe. In similar to dating, it's the same as parenthood. It's uncomfortable at times having to talk with new people. Going to a park or going to a play date by yourself and then meeting new people can be uncomfortable, but it is awesome whenever you are able to find people with similarities. You're able to be in the same stage with them, you're able to be heard, and you're able to be your true self. It's okay that your true self is a little bit different than the person you were 10 years ago. And 10 years from now, you'll probably be a little bit different as well. And I hope that each season of your life, you're able to fall into, embrace the change, and just enjoy all of it. All right, that is my quick lowdown on changes that I've experienced in motherhood, friendships, and hoping to encourage anybody along the way. I'm Alicia Foster, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye.